Yeah, well, we have time. Yeah, we have time. But sometimes they move pretty fast. Like yeah, that's really. Oh no, 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 no. Probably. Yeah, make your own book. Otherwise, these ones. I think it's like a tenor guitar. Right, right, right. Composites. You practice sometimes with like -1.
You know where this one is
It
going?
helps to improve your, like especially I have a book. It's called Minor League. Very good book. So when I started to learn how to
Oh, okay. Just to
gives you like
She's going to have how people have gone into how it affects her.
what it depends
part two and then Bakawam and this is third.
because you already hear pretty much all the notes.
Or this is
the
first.
language. I mostly start doing it on clarinet because
Where is it?
it's my main instrument. But then I branched out to other instruments. It's cello. Am I on your way? Are you away? Yeah,
Have you noticed that every time we do this, we have a different sound?
yeah. Well, not every time, but today is different. Yeah. Last time we were the same guys.
So you're not there in the morning, but we have about 5 or 6 different.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It's so nice to have
Shabbat
you
Shalom.
here on this celebration of Israel Independence Day, Yom Ha'atzmaut, 74 years old. It's hard to believe it. I mean, it's a lot. It's a very small amount for a country, and yet we remember, some of us, are when Israel became a state or when Israel wasn't a state. So before we begin, I would like you to make sure your cell phones are turned off. Please check. And please turn to someone nearby and wish them Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. So nice to be together. Hope you'll stay afterwards. I think more people are coming. We're actually supposed to be having a baby naming, and I don't think, is the family here? Are you here?
We're waiting on one more person.
Okay. We're waiting. We're going to be naming some beautiful little girls in a little bit. But we're going to start with how lovely it is to be together. Hine ma tovu ma na'im on page 10 in your prayer books and your Sidurim. So please join us.
שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, יא לה 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 לה, הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, יא לה 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 לה, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. I want to mention, and we'll mention a few more times throughout the night, the impact that Israel has had on many things throughout the world and Jewish life throughout the world. Song, synagogue song in America. Since the reestablishment of the State of Israel, hundreds and hundreds of songs composed in Israel have become our tradition here. Those two settings of Hine Ma Tov that we just sang together, composed in Israel. They were composed for Israel song festivals and Hasidic song festivals in Israel. But we've been singing those for a long time, right? For about 60 years, right? And we'll hear a few more, but it's made a huge impact on synagogue song in America.
So tonight we're going to be having performances from actors from the Braid, which is a beautiful Jewish theater company who has actually produced 70 shows, 70 different shows on Jewish content, and it's all because of one woman who conceived this, who is the executive and artistic director, Rhonda Spinak. I'd like to invite her to come up and light the Shabbat candles. Bring the warmth of those Shabbat lights into our midst.
join in the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. We turn in our prayer books. Page 5, let's all join together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho v'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom techilah lemikra'ei kodesh zecher l'yetziat Mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha ve'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen. L'chaim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
We have lovely Israeli food for you all after, so I hope you'll stay for that, and some challah. We continue now on page 24 as we welcome in the angels of Shabbat with Shalom Aleichem.
This melody, too, an Israeli composer about 5 years ago, an Israeli group called Nava Tehila. You're familiar with it now. Let's join together. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharei, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Barchuni L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. צאתכם לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון, ממלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, הקדוש ברוך הוא, הקדוש ברוך הוא.
So is the family here yet? That's fine. You let me know, okay? Okay, whenever, that's fine. So how many of you here have been to Israel? Are there any Israelis here? Israelis. So we know there are a lot of Israelis in Los Angeles, and we go to Israel and they come here. And what we know is our experience of going to Israel, and we're going to share that a little bit later. But what is the experience of Israelis who come here? And so tonight we're going to hear some stories about, true stories about Israelis who came here and how they maintained or longed for their connection to Israel. So you're here now, right? So we're going to do this piece and then we'll invite you up, okay? So we're going to hear our first story right now.
I love to cook and bake, maybe because I was born to a baker. My father left Israel for Los Angeles in 1980 and built his own bakery business, Sherman's. Everyone knew it and loved it. He's gone now, but you know those Trader Joe's challahs? They're actually my father's recipe. They're delicious. Every once in a while I buy one, and of course, I think of him. I love America, and I've always thought of myself as a proud American. But in my heart, I have to say that I'm very Israeli. It's very important for me to marry an Israeli, which I do. We're not religious, but we raise our kids that on Friday nights, you need to be at the Shabbat table. One Friday night before Shabbat dinner, my daughter grabs my phone and starts snapping all these pictures of my babkas on the kitchen counter and says, "Why don't you start posting things on Instagram?" So I create Sivan's Kitchen. I'm not huge, but I have an incredible following, and people love what I'm doing. The comments I get are very rewarding. Like, "Because of you, our Shabbats are much different," and "My husband can't wait for Shabbat because of your page," or "I've never baked a challah before you came along." I'm talking to people even though I have no idea who they are. Sending them recipes I develop, helping them if they need gluten-free or dairy-free or sugar-free. I love being part of this community. One day, I post on my Instagram that I'm very proud of Israel, that I will always stand by her, and I add an Israeli flag. A short time later, I check the comments. Some lady has posted underneath the flag, "Go burn in hell." I can't believe that someone would do something like that. Wow. Where am I living? Am I scared to say that I'm proud to be Israeli? And then it dawns on me that we need to be more proud, that we need to speak more loudly, that the more voices we have, the more people will hear us. I am Israeli. I am American. I am proudly both of them.
It's a perfect time to give Israeli/Hebrew names to two little girls. So I'm going to invite the Zachary family to come up now.
Oh, while they're coming up here, I have a little story I told this morning to our 2- and 3-year-olds in nursery school. Did you know when Moses was just a little baby, his mother would sing a lullaby to him to put him to sleep? Ay, 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 bulbele. Ay, 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 ketzele. And little baby Moses would go right to sleep. And on Shabbat, his mom would light the Shabbat candles, say the blessing. And she baked delicious challah, Moses' mother. They would say the blessing when he was a little boy. And she made him chicken soup, the greatest food ever created on planet Earth. Well, you know the story. A few years later, Moses was sent to live in the palace of the Pharaoh in Egypt to make sure that he was safe. And he grew up there. The only thing was, there were no Jews in the palace. There were no Jews in Egypt. Moses was the only Jew, and he was in the palace where there were no Jews. So he grew up. After a time, he didn't know he was Jewish anymore. And one day he decided to take a walk out through the town. And he walked and walked and walked, and he came upon this little area where Jews lived. And he saw 2 little candles lighting in the window. And he got closer, and he heard the mom saying the blessing, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu. And he remembered that blessing, and he remembered the lights, but he couldn't remember where he learned it. Yes. And the next day, he went back into the Jewish part of town and smelled this smell emanating from one of the homes. He got closer. He saw the family sharing a piece of bread. And he remembered that smell, but he couldn't remember where he knew it from. And the next day, the same thing, out into the Jewish quarter, and he smelled the smell coming through one of the windows, and it was the most delicious smell he had ever smelled in his life. And he got closer to the windows. Chicken soup! Candles, challah, chicken soup. I remember, I'm Jewish. And that's how Moses remembered he was a Jew.
Thank you. So, Hank, you come here and put this towel so they can hear. Oh, I'm straight. So we have 2 namings. We have May, and then we have Jane. And Hank, the big brother, is going to put the talit around each one of his sisters and help. And we have the parents, Alyssa and Jordan, and the grandparents, Evie and Chip. So it's a beautiful day to name 2 beautiful girls. Behold, children are a heritage of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a precious reward. Rabbi Meir taught, when God gave the Torah to our ancestors, the Holy One said, your children are the best guarantee, better than patriarchs and prophets. It is for their sake I give you the Torah. Our God and God of all generations, we thank you for all blessing, for the mystery and rejoicing of life, for the sustenance and friendship, for Torah and mitzvot, for companionship and love, yet especially for the joy and sacred privilege of parenthood. Eternal God, grant unto Alyssa and Jordan wisdom to teach their daughters Torah, knowledge to rear them with a generous love for all human beings, and sensitivity to nourish the full flowering of their potential. Be praised, O eternal source of life.
O Lord our God, with thanksgiving for the birth of our child, we express our joy and gratitude. May we fulfill the task of teaching our new daughters to care about their heritage and to live by the values and ideals of our tradition.
With wisdom and love, may we nurture in our children the yearning to wear the crown of a good name. Grant to her years of harmony and peace.
Our God and God of all generations, we are grateful for new beginnings, for the bond of new life that links one generation to another. Thankful for the blessings of family, for the love and care that bring meaning and happiness to all our lives. We rejoice with our children at the birth of their children, our grandchildren. Thank you.
Oh.
May we be enabled to share in the joy of seeing these children grow into adulthood, a blessing to their family, their people, and all humanity.
Let us say amen. Every child comes into the world with a message that God is not discouraged with us, for with every birth, for every young child comes hope for a world redeemed, a world without pain, violence, and war. So now I'm going to give first a name to May. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, kayamet hayalda hazot lavia la'ima v'yikra shema b'Yisrael, Esther bat Malka v'Yared. Yismach ha'av b'yotzet halatza v'tagel ima b'pri bitna, zot haktana gdola yiyeh, keshem shenichnasa labrit, kain tikanes laTorah, lachupa, lamazim tovim. And wouldn't you like to know what that means? Our God and God of our people, sustain this beautiful girl and let her be known in the house of Israel as Esther bat Malka v'Yared. May the one who blessed our people bless Esther and keep her from all harm. May her parents rear her to dedicate her life to faithfulness to God, her heart receptive always to Torah and mitzvot, that she shall bring blessing to her parents, her people, and the world. And let us say, amen. So now I want you to put this talit on your other sister. Okay. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, kayamet hayalda hazot laviha v'li'ima v'yikra shema b'Yisrael, Matya bat Malka v'Yared. Yismach ha'av b'yotzet chalatza v'tagel ima b'fri bitna, zot haktana gdola yiyeh, keshem shenichnasa labrit, kain tikanes laTorah u'lachupa u'lamaasim tovim. Our God and God of our people, sustain this beautiful little girl and let her be known in the house of Israel as Matya bat Malka v'Yared. May the one who blessed our people bless this child and keep her from all harm. May her parents raise her to dedicate her life in faithfulness to God, her heart receptive always to Torah and mitzvot. Then shall she bring blessing to her parents, her people, and all the world. And let us say, amen.
Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha.
May God watch over you and bless you.
Yair Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka.
May God shine light into your lives and be gracious to you.
Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha וישם לך שלום, שלום, shalom.
May God lift you in health and strength and love and closeness and grant you the greatest gift of all, the gift of peace. And let us all say, Amen. And let's do Siman Tov and Mazel Tov.
Siman Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Siman Tov, Siman Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Siman Tov, Siman Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Siman Tov. Yehelanu, 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 Ulecho Yisrael. Yehelanu, Yehelanu, Ulecho Yisrael.
So beautiful. Oh, I almost forgot. Here are your certificates, so you know it really happened. Paperwork, he said. We continue now with our beautiful song as we welcome the Shabbat Queen into our midst. We have, such great energy from children and stories and Israel, and now we have the Shabbat Queen joining us, Lecha Dodi, on page 20.
This melody, also composed by an Israeli. You'll recognize it as soon as we begin. His name is Mordechai Zeira. He was born in Kyiv, Ukraine. Emigrated to Israel in 1924. 24 years before Israel became a state. He worked as a construction worker, building roads, but he had a gift for song, and he became one of Israel's greatest composers. Here's his setting of Lecha Dodi, which he composed in 1950. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat, nekabla, Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat, nekabla, Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, ishmi'anu el ha'miuchad, Adonai echad u'shmo echad, v'shem u'tiferet v'litila, Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat, nekabla, Likrat Shabbat v'kru v'nelcha, ki mekor habracha, mirosh mikerem nesucha, sof ma'aseh b'machashava techila, Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat, nekabla, Hit'orri, ki va'oreku mi'ori, uri, shir daberi, kvod Adonai alayich nigla, Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat, nekabla.
We rise and we face the back to welcome in the Shabbat bride.
Boi v'shalom ateret ba'ala, gam b'simcha u'b'tzahola, toch emuneh Am Sigula, Po Vichala, Lecha Dodi, kala ligrat kala, pnei Shabbat nikabela, nikabela.
Please remain standing as we continue with the Baruch Hu, the call to prayer on page 28.
Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la la la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Please join me on page 31 on the top in English, and let's read together. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the day on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars, creator of the tide of time and light. You guide the current of day into night as heaven spans to infinity. You set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows.
Umavi yom umavi laila, umavdil ben yom uben laila, Adonai tzivot shemo, El chai v'kayam, tamidim lo chalenu le'olam va'ed, Baruch ata Adonai, Amari v'aravim. Amen.
On page 32.
Ahavat olam bet Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu, b'shokbenu v'kumenu, na'asiach bechukecha. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu, b'shokbenu v'kumenu, na'asiach bechukecha. V'nismach, v'nismach, b'divrei Toratecha, u'b'mitzvotecha, u'b'mitzvotecha, le'olam va'ed. Ki chayenu le'orach yameinu, u'bahem negei yomam v'layla. Ki chayenu le'orach yameinu, u'bahem negei yomam v'layla. Ki hem chayenu le'orach yameinu, u'bahem negei yomam v'layla. Ki hem chayenu le'orach yameinu, u'bahem negei yomam v'layla. Ve'ahavatcha al tasir mimenu le'olamim. Baruch ata Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Baruch Shem kevod
Please be seated. Well, I think about the Shema, and I think about how it expresses the oneness between all of us, especially all Jews. All Jews, if you're going to know one prayer as a Jew, you're going to know the Shema. I think about how the children of Israel all know the Shema. And then I think about the Jewish children in the Ukraine, and if they're saying the Shema, and what the Shema means to them when this terrible ordeal that they're going through, and how a lot of times we say the Shema and we take it for granted. But it really is a very empowering and sustaining prayer. And that just leads into this, the Via Hafta, where we are obligated to teach our children about our traditions, about our mitzvot, about a way of life that is sustaining and not destructive, that is positive, that is progressive, forward-thinking about making the world a better place. So let's continue with the Via Hafta.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושינתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
So the Mijo Mojo is the song that the Israelites sang after they crossed the Red Sea, or the Sea of Reeds, as they call it. I still like to call it the Red Sea. I don't know. Sea of Reeds doesn't have that, I don't know, gravitas that Red Sea feels like. Anyway, and they were on their way to Israel, to the Promised Land, to the land of Canaan. This was 1200 BCE, approximately. So I want to know what year was the first time you went to Israel? How long ago? Of course, Penina were you born there? So you'll tell us how long ago you were in Israel. And like one or two words to describe your feeling, the emotion you had when you got there the very first time. So who would like to share what year or how many years ago did you get there? Okay. Yes. Right. So you walked up. Okay. Thank you. 1973. Did you hear that? She's. So did you hear? She went to Israel in 1978, and she had just gotten married, and she put a note in the wall that if she got pregnant, she would come back for her daughter's bat mitzvah, and she got pregnant that night. And the daughter had her bat mitzvah, and this little girl is the daughter of the daughter. Okay, yes.
And we were there for both Remembrance Day. We went to Yad Vashem, and also for Israel Independence Day, which was pretty cool. And I put a note in the wall to please meet my beshert, and I did, almost right away. And then I went back with him, and we got engaged in Jerusalem on Erev Rosh Hashanah. And I put a note in the wall to please give me a child. And in 2007, I took that child for his high school graduation to Israel.
That wall is really good. Anyone else want to share when first time they went to Israel?
1993, they had the tram into Masada. I hiked up it anyway.
Wow. Anyone else want to share? Yes.
I went in September of 2017, and I went with this gentleman right here, and it was our first trip, and I was amazed with what had happened and what I saw there, and the development with the people, the enthusiasm, the excitement. They were just talking about doing the Negev. They were going to build that out, and it was fascinating. It was fascinating.
1996, I went with my family, and we met my father's first cousin, who was the only Holocaust survivor. But she had married and had a large family, so.
One more. Anyone else?
I went to Israel for the first time in 1993 with this gentleman and our two wives, and my wife prior to that had put in the wall, I'd like to meet the man of my dreams. I'm serious. And lo and behold, yes, here I am, and I might add, I'm here. Unfortunately, my wife passed away 4 months ago. Yeah.
So I beat you all. I went there in 1968. I was a teenager, and what I noticed is they didn't have anything. They didn't have cars. They didn't have washing machines. They didn't have telephones. It took 3 years to get a telephone, and nobody had a car. Nobody had a toaster. You washed your clothes in the bathtub, and it was the greatest year of my life. And I realized you hardly need anything. If you have friends, if you have, a beautiful community. I came back to America. I remember thinking, we are so rich. We're so rich because you had nothing and people were happy, and it was like a big family. It was like a big family. And so it all started right after the Mijo Mojo. How's that for a transition? And so we continue on page 40 with the Mijo Mojo.
Mi chamolcha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamolcha netar b'kodesh norati lod, osefel, malchutecha ra'ul banecha, pokei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, malchutecha ra'ul banecha, pokei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, Adonai imloch leolam, לעולם ועד. יא לה 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 יא לה 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 יא לה 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 יא לה 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 יא לה 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 יא לה לה ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגדול מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני קהל ישראל אמן.
My parents were ardent Zionists. They were pioneers, passionate about shaping a new world. They came to Israel in the 30s. When my father heard that his parents were killed in Auschwitz, he was absolutely devastated. I saw this man who was to me strength, beauty, kindness, fall absolutely apart. He took his tefillin, ritual objects Jews put on daily, binding themselves to God and Torah, and he threw them into the trash. He took his prayer books and he threw them away too. Judaism, religion, tradition, God had failed him. And this splits me from having a longing to embrace the beauty of religion and the feeling that to embrace anything related to religion is to betray my father. My mother retrieves my father's tefillin, but this is when my quarrel with God begins. When my mother develops a particular medical condition, the only way that we can deal with it is to come to America. The Judaism that I'm exposed to in the States feels materialistic. At 17, all I want to do is go back to Israel, join the youth movement, live on a kibbutz, and continue the pioneering life that my parents birthed me into. I drank social justice with my mother's milk. But woman plans and God laughs. I fall in love, get married, and stay in the US. My husband is training to become a physician, and I'm a failed Brooklyn housewife. I never get it right. And this leaves something wanting in me. When my husband suddenly dies, I'm left with 2 kids, no education, no job, clueless. I eventually meet and fall in love with a recently widowed man with 3 children. We moved to Denver. Now I have 5 children, 2 of them teenagers, and I need wisdom fast. I turn back to school and study philosophy. It doesn't take long to realize that philosophy isn't going to help with the practical questions that are at the core of my day-to-day life. But by then, it's too late. I'm hooked. I also take a course in Bible. Now I want to study Talmud. But the only people who know Talmud well won't teach someone like me because I'm a woman. Even so, there is this longing that has no name. I go to a friend who's a modern Orthodox rabbi. I tell him, Rav, I have this dilemma. I have this secret longing that I have to share with someone, and I don't know what to do with it. And I sit there, and I can't bring the words. He must be thinking it's something terrible. And I finally say, and I'm going to cry now, I want to live a holy life. I want to live a life where there is a holiness and an intimate relation with the tradition and with God. But there's no word for it for a woman. There's only a word for it in Hebrew for a man. The word is chassid. Chassid means a pious person who is devout and connected to the tradition, who lives a life in the presence of God. But there's no word for a female chassid. Because the Hebrew word for chassid, when applied to a woman, is chasidah, chasidah means a stork, a bird that brings in babies. He has compassion for my situation, but no real advice. I complete my PhD, an interview at Hebrew Union College in Los Angeles. I would be the first woman on the rabbinical school's faculty. I know instantly that I am home for the first time since I left Israel. A few years into teaching Torah, I realize I want to become a rabbi. If I'm going to wrestle with God, I have to enter the ring, put on the gloves, and then fight and embrace. When I'm nearing the end of my studies, I turn in my last homework assignment. It's a project on death and mourning. It's as if someone is giving me the tools to confront what I'm about to find at home. My husband of 25 years has just had a fatal heart attack, and everything changes. I don't get ordained. Life and death keep interfering in my journey. From beginning to end, it takes me 18 years to become a rabbi. But finally, I am ordained. Years later, I take my father's tefillin to see if they're still kosher, because they're old and moldy. The rabbi is very sorry to tell me that they're damaged. They can't really be fixed. And now I say, okay, I cannot fix it, but I can use it, even if they're not kosher, because I've come to realize I'm not always sure how kosher God is. There's so much that just doesn't work. I have broken tefillin. They come from a broken story. And I often think what my father would say if he were alive to see what's happened in my life. I feel that I've reclaimed what he lost. And I didn't know that's what I was trying to do. But there is some sense, by my reclaiming it, that it brings him into the future. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my words could proclaim your praise.
Please rise for the Amidah. Page 463. Page 48. I don't know why I got 463. Page 48.
That's the page in the next book. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, ve'Koneh Hakol, ve'Zocher Chastei Avot ve'Imahot, u'mevii Geula livnei bneihem, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב והושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומדום מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל.
We continue silently with the prayers in our Siddur until page 62, our own personal meditation and prayer. When you are finished, you may be seated. Please be seated.
Please turn to page 356. 356. For this beautiful and deep and powerful song from the great poet and composer Naomi Shemer, who wrote this just after the Six-Day War, 1967. We'll sing the first and last verses together.
Harim salul kayayim v'reach haranim nisa beruach ha'arbayim im kol ba'amonim u'v'tardemat ilan va'even shvuya b'chaloma העיר אשר בדד יושבת ובליבה חומה, ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, על כל שירייך אני כינור. חזרנו אל בורות המים, לשוק ולכיכר, שופר קורא בהר הבית, בעיר העתיקה, ובמראות אשר בסלע, אלפי שמשות צורחות, ושוב נרד אל ים המלח בדרך יריחו, ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, על אור כל שירייך אני כינור. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, על אור כל שירייך אני כינור.
Actually, I think this is a perfect time to turn to page 259 and read a prayer for Israel after that beautiful song. So please join me on page 259. Avinu Shabashamayim, O Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel. Please join me on the bottom of page 259. Bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. And let us say, Amen. Amen. We take a moment now to remember those in our lives who need a blessing of healing. We're going to say the Misha Be'erach prayer in a moment on page 253. But if there's someone that you would like to be blessed, especially, I ask you to stand up now, and when I point to you, please say that person's name out loud. Page 253. Those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. I'd just like to add 4 more names for the blessing: Bonnie Chiswick, Charles Schwartz, Marcy Siegel, and Alan Cerroti. And now for our final story about Israel.
I'm 7 when I leave Israel. And from then on, I resist my Israeli background. My mom was born in the US and made Aliyah with her family when she was 10. My father was born and raised in Israel. His family was from Morocco. I was born in a suburb of Tel Aviv. My parents divorced. My dad moved to New York. My mom remarried, and we moved to Los Angeles. I hate my name. Dikla. Dikla is how it's pronounced in the United States. Dikla is not an easy name to grow up with. The boys are merciless. I just want to be Crystal, or Jessica, or Tiffany. I don't like my identity. And the Israelis that I do know, I don't feel comfortable with. In fact, my family stops speaking Hebrew and I actually lose the ability to speak the language. We're a very secular family. We do Shabbat dinner, but never go to synagogue. Right after college, I take a birthright trip, simply because it's a free trip with people my age, and I know it will be fun. Only 3 of us on the bus are Israeli. We feel this immediate connection. We feel special. And something just clicks. All of a sudden, I feel Israeli. I visit my grandmother, my dad's mom, whom I haven't seen in 15 years. And when I see her, I feel like I have roots here. I have a history that somehow I belong. But I can't speak Hebrew, so I have a hard time communicating with her. Later, the Israeli soldier that is accompanying us on the trip says, Dikla, you're Israeli. How is it that you do not speak Hebrew? And in that moment, I realize what I had given up. I come home and relearn how to speak Hebrew. I go to Israel every single summer. I start dating only Jewish guys. I marry an Israeli. We have 3 children and talk often about moving back to Israel. It's not until after we divorce, COVID hits, he's out of a job, and I realize my English writing skills are in demand, that we decide to all move back to Israel. At the airport, it's very emotional. My mom remembers the day she left her own mother at the airport in Israel when she moved us to the US. She had told her mom, I'll be back in a few years. And then her mom passed away. So as I'm about to leave, she holds me close and said, I promised my mom that we would be reunited. And I never got to live in the same city with her again. I really hope that's not our story. I hope that in 2 to 3 years, when your stepdad and I retire, that you and I will be in the same country again. And then she adds, wait for me. My family is just getting settled now. We've only been here since January. A lot of people scratch their heads and ask me, why did you come back? You moved from Los Angeles? It's my dream to live in America. And yet, I've also met a lot of Israelis who have moved back. You know, it's so personal. There's nothing like Israel. You just can't replace the sense of belonging, the sense of community. Everywhere you go, the camaraderie, the connection to people. And yes, everyone is in your face and in your business. But that's how you feel connected. I was missing that.
Bottom of page 348. 348. We'll close this section of our service on a note of hope. Hashana Haba'ah. Next year, there will soon come a day where we'll say, we will see, you will see how good it will be next year. Who composed this melody? Nurit Hirsch, another one of the great Israeli song composers. He also wrote, Oseh Shalom Bimrama. Somewhat familiar tune all over planet Earth. So join with me, if you will. Bottom of page 348. We'll sing a couple of verses. No, I'm sorry, Bill. That's the next piece. He was playing another piece. We were going to do Yerushalayim, but the hour is growing late, so we're gonna move on.
בשנה הבאה נשב על המרפסת ונספור את סיפורים ונודדות. ילדים בחושה ישחקו תופסת בין הבית לבין הסודות. עוד תראה כמה טוב יהיה בשנה הבאה. עוד תראה כמה טוב יהיה בשנה הבאה. בשנה הבאה נפרוס כפות ידיים מול האור הניגר הלבן. ענפה לבנה תפרוש באור נפיים והשמש תזרח בתוכן. עוד תראה כמה טוב יהיה בשנה הבאה. עוד תראה כמה טוב יהיה בשנה הבאה.
Just one announcement before we conclude our service with Kaddish. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers, and I hope all of the children of mothers and husbands of mothers and partners of mothers are going to give them a beautiful day. For any of our other programs, please consult your emails. You're getting them every day, so there's no need to announce them here. We're going to continue and conclude now with Kaddish. And it is our custom, if anyone is observing the first 30 days Shloshim, to please rise. And if anyone is observing a yort site this week, to please rise. We begin by remembering those who have passed away during Shloshim, 30 days. Malvin Bank, Robert Berg, Joseph Dannon, Linda Leisner, Joyce Powell, Yusuf Nasser Soleimani. We also remember those whose yortzites are this past week, the anniversaries of their deaths. Pauline Adler, Frank Albert, Louis Applebaum, Aziz Arastujadeh, Ruth Astor, Ida Barkin, Irene Bastine, Dolph Baum, Louis Bauman, Rose Bauman, Victor Bahar, Zach Bell, Donald Burkus, Bert Blauner, Tony Block, Harry Blumkin, Francis Bakanek, Tamar Bornstein, Richard Browerman, John Catafo, Benjamin Chekanow, Joseph Chiswick, Manna Cohen, Solomon Cohen, Theodore Coplin, Seymour Corin, Norma Daum, Bruce Arthur Devlin, Gordon Drischler, Dorothy Eric, Ray Feidelson, Esther Feldman, Daniel Feldstein, Ben Fenton, Harry Finkel, Eugene Fisher, Regina Fleischer, Lois Jean Foreman, Harold Freilich, Joan Friedman, Ben Freilich, Eleanor Froman, Eugene Galen, Herbert Ginsberg, Nathan Gitlin, Sonia Golad, David Goldsmith, Florence Sesson Goodman, Sylvia Gottenberg, Erwin Greenwald, Lillian Harrison, Helen Hendler, Lucille Ermis, Ralph Kalish, Lee Kapoor, Norton Kirschbaum, Selma Klin, Solomon Kokotov, Aaron Kosman, Milton Cover, Joan Kreider, Erwin Colwyn, Sal Laska, Sidney Laxer, Nathan Lefkow, Ruth Levine, Jamshid Lolachi, Beverly Miller, Jonathan Moore, Bernard Morgan, Lillian Moskowitz, Fred Nadich, Nehemiah Naim, Carol Neubauer, Leon Paris, Marcia Flug, Robert Picard, Doris Preston, Inez Reese, Ruth Robin, Ethel Roseman, Burton Rosen, Barbara Rosenfeld, Norman Rubin, Diane Sass, Ann Schiff, Rose Schwimmer, Michael Center, Selma Cesar, Alexander Shamesh, Rusty Sherman, Isidore Shore, Ben Schreier, Aline Wildspeed, Louis Spiegelman, Barbara Stevens, Dorothea Stokes, Sylvia Pankin Sutkin, Elsie Teitelbaum, Florin Tilzer, Sharon Tuman, Rhett Turner, Belle Verzi, Nancy Weeks, Emmanuel Weiner, Sidney Weisberg, Joseph Weissman, Mickey Weiss, Jerry Werlin, Stephanie White, Roni Wiesel, Ruth Wilkes, Barbara Wise, David Wolf, Albert Zlotnick, Russell Zolan. Are there any more names to add? We also remember those who gave their lives defending the United States of America and the State of Israel, those who have died in senseless violence, terrorism, war, those who have died from disease, from pandemic, and those who have no one to say Kaddish for them. We take them all as our own as we turn to page 298, and please rise. 294, and please rise. I don't have my right glasses. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
V'yalma divrach yivutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chai echon u'v'yom echon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala u'v'zman kari v'yimru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam lomei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalel v'yitalal shmei d'kudusha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, damiram v'yalma v'yimru Amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shamaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'akol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'akol Yisrael. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'akol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'akol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'akol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom,
Shabbat Shalom, and thank you to our musicians and our actors. Please join us for falafel, Israeli salad, hummus, pita, a whole delicious little feast outside.